Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. Beautiful Wednesday morning it is. It's a midweek edition of Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. My name is Uyai Anik, and I am excited to be alive and to be doing this with you this morning.
And I am Francis Oyemather. Glad to have you join us. It's the midweek edition. And of course, by today, 15 days already spent in the month of November.
Half the month is gone.
Yeah, half the month is gone. So I think a lot of people are still pretty much excited. They can't wait to see the end of November. But to some persons, they just would want the month to delay a little bit, you know, for more hustling to make sure that they have everything put in place for the festivities.
Well, I think the closest excitement to this season is the fact that the holidays are coming. But we've been having several conversations, looking at expectations and some projections for the festivities. But let's see how it goes. The economy and money is this really strong part of how holiday makers thrive, and what will be happening. But of course, we're here to talk Nigeria and look at other issues happening around the world. Would like to encourage you, be a part of the conversation. So you need to follow us across all social media platforms, all of which you can find at SpectrumTv Live. We'd always like to reiterate the fact that we are live 24/7 on our website. We're also currently streaming Rise and Shine on YouTube and every other content that Spectrum Television brings. So if you are, if you need to get on the go right now, but you want to follow through with the conversations we have, YouTube is your best bet because we're live at the moment. Also, take advantage of our phone lines, send us text messages, send us WhatsApp messages, and you can also call in when we open the phone lines for Nigerians to talk on the issues that, bothers us greatly at this time.
Well, of course, talking Nigeria, we'll be looking at a lot of issues this morning. The issue of the new Naira and the whole Naira being legal tender in Nigeria has been re-emphasized by the CBN, where they're saying both currencies are going to remain as legal tender indefinitely. And a lot of questions are arising from that decision of the Central Bank of Nigeria, which of course is expected as being backed by the present administration. And it takes a mind back to the whole cash crunch and the saga that came as a result of that. We'll also be looking into the issue of the NLC-TC nationwide strike, which started yesterday and recorded a lot of, huge compliance across the states of the Federation. Also, we will be looking at the comment coming from Hope Uzodimma finally in reaction to the incident that happened in his state between Joe Ajero rather and the government of Uzodimma in Imo State over the workers' poor treatment. Of course, I will also be looking at the comment coming from President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, who has said he inherited a whole lot of liabilities from the outgone administration of the then President Muhammadu Buhari. And of course, he also admitted he took over some, good assets. So we'll be looking at finally the call made by the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Elijah Atiku Abubakar, who is calling for a merger of the coalitions of opposition parties to be able to defeat the incumbent APC, a thing that many had called for long before the elections. But even in the heat of the elections, it still didn't happen. Of course, we'll see the civil society organizations recommending that NAHCON consider reducing Saudi-based services. This is an aftermath of the incident that happened between Nigeria and Saudi Arabia, where a whole lot of persons were denied visa upon arrival. Of course, we'll also be looking at the REPS panel, which has frowned at the MDAs for their poor account submission. Still getting back to the conversations about accountability and transparency in spending of governance, finances entrusted to individuals within the leadership of these MDAs. A lot more will be coming, of course, and our focus this morning will be looking at conversations bordering on education and the recent move by the federal government to get 40% of internally generated revenue from tertiary institutions and the reaction coming from the leadership of ASU and, of course, the university community.
Well, of course, these are some of the conversations that we have on our table this morning. So at any point where you have something to offer, any concern, any question or any contribution, I beg your pardon, please take advantage of the phone lines that would intermittently display on our screen so that we can get your thoughts on these issues. Of course, we get first all the way to our flash stories for this morning. All right, we just get.
Rise and shine. Rise and shine.
Of course, on our flash news for this morning, the very top of what we have says, of course, the Central Bank of Nigeria has reiterated again that the 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira banknotes are to remain legal tender. Just that this time they added indefinitely, because I mean, it's like they tried to say this to Nigerians last week or thereabout, but it seemed not to have sunk into the ears of certain commercial bank operators. And the Central Bank of Nigeria has come out today to say that these old notes are going to run concurrently with the redesigned Naira banknotes indefinitely. But of course, we see the fact that new currencies were introduced last year with the old ones set to cease as legal tender. But we see that the Apex Bank, yesterday being Tuesday, extended the legal tender status deadline till, indefinitely. So, of course, it explains that the move is in line with international best practices to forestall a repeat of earlier experiences. Of course, so they've issued that all banknotes issued by the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, in accordance with Section 20, Subsection 5 of the CBN Act of 2007, will continue to remain legal tender ad infinitum, even beyond the initial December 31st, 2023 deadline. The Kodoso-led CBN, these are some of the moves that they're making right now to stabilize the economy.
Well, is it a move being taken to safeguard the economy?
It will safeguard the economy. Imagine that we went into a second round of a cash crunch, Francis.
Well, it's debatable, but if we take our minds back to video footages and evidences that surfaced just during the cash crunch policy from Kano State, we saw Governor Nasir El-Rufai, speaking to his people when Nigerians were seriously heated by the cash crunch, where he categorically stated that once President Ahmed Bola Tinubu comes on board, that the old Naira note is going to return as legal tender, and that brought the disparity that while we were selling the old Naira notes back here in the southeast, the southwest, the south, people in the north, particularly Kano State, were not boarded because they had the confirmation of the #1 citizen that the old Naira note was going to begin to still remain a legal tender. I remember at some point during the deadline of returning the old Naira notes, people here in Akwa Ibom said had to go to deal with the Northerners in the trading park and then exchange their their Naira rather, at a very insignificant price for when you consider the value. For instance, 1,000 was given at 500. You're given back the new 500 Naira note and all of that. So it's a lot for Nigerians to feel that these had been long planned even before President Ahmed Bola Tinubu came into power. It was a move that was well calculated, because if Nasir El-Rufai could have the mindset and the guts to say that when Nigerians was scampering and struggling to get the old Naira or the new Nairas at then, that it definitely means a whole lot of conversation had been happening underneath the ground before without Nigerians knowing. Of course, we saw that the policy also did not stand well with the president, who was then the presidential candidate of the APC. So a whole lot is not settling well for Nigerians. And the questions Nigerians are asking, for all the suffering that we went through during that period, for all the devaluation of money that we saw during that period, people getting 500,000 but are given, even within the banking hall, they're given 450,000 naira for some, funny reasons given by the banking institutions, and all of the other things that Nigerians suffered. Who is going to pay for those damages? We're still not resolved the billions of naira Nigerians have lost within the time of that cash crunch, transfer transactions hanging here and there. Personally, I can't count how much is lost and how much is still hanging. And for you to even attempt to go to the bank to try and resolve those issues it's complete waste of time, because it seems like the CBN has lost its monitoring strength to ensure compliance and ensure that money lost by Nigerians during that period is being restored to the respective account. It is not enough for the CBN and the leadership of this country to tell Nigerians how much has been lost in transaction or within the period of the cash crunch without taking steps to make sure that Nigerians get to recoup their money or recover their money. So it's a whole lot of conversations. Yes, a lot of people would say it's a step to salvage the economy, but this is something that could have been done a long time before now. So why now? Why this moment? Why at this material time? So either ways, you could say it will save the economy, yes, but it doesn't change the fact that Nigerians have lost a great deal and the federal government is yet to repay Nigerians for those losses.
I think attempting to nib it in the bud is it's a good step in the right direction, and that we must appreciate Congress for, because for instance, that whole cycle and rat race was to start again. It would be a really difficult place for Nigerians to be twice in 1 year. The question of why, is it coming now? The easiest excuse would be that Congress was not at the helm of affairs. I mean, this was a Godwin Emefiele stunt with regards to the Naira. But now let's see how, this particular memo from the Central Bank of Nigeria is going to reflect on the real-time experience the Nigerians are having, for some very weird reasons that I think even the Central Bank of Nigeria is trying to grasp, its head around. The Naira seems to be scarce in some parts of the country. So it is important. This is a call by Nigerians to the Central Bank of Nigeria. I want to call on the National Assembly again, but I remember the words of the Senate President that we call them for everything, both the ones that concern them and don't concern them. But we need people that can hold some of these agencies to accountability. And so the Central Bank of Nigeria, the National Assembly, excuse me, Mr. Senate President, and, commercial banks, they need to probe and see what exactly is going on. Why is money scarce in some part of the country? But as it stands, the Central Bank of Nigeria has sent out a directive that the old 1,000 naira, 500 naira, and 200 naira banknotes remain legal tender in Nigeria indefinitely. They did not shift it from December 31st to another date. Going forward, use that money till infinitum, as their words, captured it this morning. We'll move on to a very next flash story. This morning, we also hope that this would direct the activities of commercial banks and also point of sale operators around the country. Let's see that we have some peace, at least in one sector of things in this country. But to our very next, flash story this morning, the NLC-TUC strike that started out yesterday, looking at how the response trickled in nationwide. But I think basically this strike action is colored with mixed compliance, mixed reactions, and all of that from all over the country. We saw some, states comply. We saw some agencies comply, but it was not necessarily a nationwide lockdown, as was projected, or the NLC-TUC thought it was going to be. But we had strict compliance in some places and maybe just some percentage compliance in other places, with regards to the strike action.
Well, when you talk about compliance to national strike actions organized by NLCT, you see there are a lot of conversations right now. You could say some of the workers are afraid of what might happen because of the dangling of the rod by the federal government, talking about the court order or the restraining orders stopping or preventing the NLC and its affiliate unions from embarking on the industrial action. But then the narrative being twisted around at the moment, it still goes to show on the federal government point of view, that the end of the CTUC, nationwide strike is just in the interest of one person. I know a lot of also been said that the NLC President Jajaro was in Imo State to canvass for support for the Labour Party gubernatorial candidate. But of course, as far as the footages and evidences that have surfaced in Imo State and from that incident that happened on the 1st of November is concerned, we had not seen anybody clouded in the political attire of the Labour Party in Imo State or bearing the face of the gubernatorial candidate in Imo State in that Labour Party at the Labour Secretariat when that incident happened. So how do you justify it? At what point was he in the company of the gubernatorial candidate and the Labour Party's loyalists in Imo State? Because if he was arrested there, then Nigerians wouldn't bother to question, the incident that happened. Everybody would know literally, okay, he was, out of line. But you have not shown any evidence, and every evidence pointing to the incident from his arrest to his detention is from the NLC Secretariat, which clearly shows he was in Imo State to canvass for the rights of the workers. So it's a whole lot. And for the first time, a lot of people are saying the federal government is trying to use these tactics to again destabilize the union's activities, destabilize collective collaboration on the part of workers. Because once you begin to have workers being divided, then there is that tendency for the federal government to say, oh, some workers complied, others did not comply. So for those who did not comply, they're okay. For those who did comply, of course, we already had a court order, that should not have allowed for the NLC and TUC to embark on the strike. But however you look at it, the fact that Joe Ajero was brutalized in Imo State remains a very serious threat to Nigeria's democracy. It remains a very serious threat to the body language of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu when it concerns the rights of Nigerians. It remains a very serious threat language to our collective security and safety, when it comes to expressing our fundamental human rights and constitutionally so. So it's a lot disturbing. But most importantly is the fact that NLC has consistently said they are going to, TUC and NLC are going to continue to mobilize. Some persons might have difficulty. Back here in Akwa Ibom State, before the full compliance, in the early hours of the morning, there were some, agencies that didn't want to comply until the NLC leadership mobilized to the respective locations where compliance were not being, in place. So they got to that point, and then they were able to enforce those compliances. So it is expected that as today goes, as the strike enters day 2, we're going to see a lot more compliance across. I mean, a lot of unions had declared their support for it. But then, at this point, what Nigerians are calling on is on the federal government. As we listened to Festus Osifo yesterday, the TUC leader, when he stated that, of course, reminding Nigerians the federal government had been given an extension after the 30-day suspension. So you had 30 days to implement the terms of agreement, the MOU that was signed, and then after that you were given an extension. And if you look at the time period that was given, Nigerians would say the federal government had enough time to deal with all of the issues before the Joe Ajero Imo State governor's incident that happened, which happened to be like the fuel that got the inferno higher than it was expected and sooner than it possibly would have happened.
Well, one thing we also must note is that not just Joe Ajero's issue is not like the only reason why this indefinite strike has been pushed for by the NLC TUC. Now, that is the easiest thing for the federal government to hamper on. But they have also said they had put certain things on the table in their conversation with the federal government, of which in the 30 days timeline that was given, they have not necessarily seen the federal government implement upon those things. Yes, the biggest move that has been made is the wage award that was allocated space in the supplementary budget of the 2023 supplementary budget. So it's not like Joe Ajero's case is just the topmost of it. It's just part of it, because let's have a psychological conversation about this. Imagine that you can do that to the NLC boss, or the federal government can sit and excuse that action by the Imo State government. Hope Uzodinma, as of until yesterday, had not said anything, had not apologized, about that issue. The federal government has not said anything about it, they've not necessarily frowned about it. They just came out to say, oh, it's not strong enough for you to personalize the instrumentality of the labor union and go on strike because of one person. And I mean, it's politics. It's also funny how it plays here. Different people have come out to give statements as to the fact that, Joe Ajaero is politicizing the labor union. Is this the opinion of, union members and all of that? That's something we'd also have to find out. But still looking at the strike yesterday, we had, in terms of compliance, there were some, key establishments that actually, complied with the move. And one of such is the fact that workers of the first deep sea port in Nigeria, the Lekki port, yesterday also joined the strike action directed by the labor unions in Nigeria. Of course, we see the fact that the Vice President, Senior Staff Association of Statutory Corporations and Government-Owned Companies, Ugo Chukwueze, said the shutdown was in line with the directive of the Nigerian Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress, TUC, to protest the assault on the president of the NLC, Joe Ajaero, and other unions officials allegedly under the order of the government of Imo State. Now, of course, we also see that the union also disclosed the fact that the continued refusal of government to implement agreements, non-payment of backlog of salaries and pensions, discriminatory payment of salaries, and non-compliance to national minimum wage were responsible for the strike action. So it's not just Ajaero. Ajaero seems to be like the loudest part that the federal government is taking to run with. But we also see that the deep sea port was shut from 6 a.m. and stayed so to the leadership. Of course, they proposed to stay so till the leadership of the unions give contrary directive. So, of course, no vessel at the port berth there was no vessel at the port berth as of the time, and it was gathered that trucks with empty or laden containers were not allowed into or outside the port. So we see some really strong compliance. Now, when you see the Lekki port actually in compliance of this, we are seeing that all of the things that's supposed to go in and out of the port is going to be grounded. And when that's grounded, we have to look at the impact on what it's going to have on all of the sectors that are importing or exporting out of the port. And I think another really strong conversation around this is the fact that now this is day 2. If we keep pushing at this, I think I'm most concerned about the economic impact of this. But I think you said something yesterday. It's high time, like most Nigerians are saying, let's choose a path, let's choose a course and pursue. If we are going on this strike, let us go on this strike and see what the result is going to be in Nigeria. Not every now and then the NLC TUC promises and then they call them into one meeting, such as the one that they called yesterday, and then before you know it, they say the strike has been called off. But let's see how exactly this is going to end. We hope it's in favor of the Nigerian people.
Well, just looking at the comments from Kamaruddin, the Special Assistant to the Attorney General of the Federation, talking about the subsisting court order barring Imo State workers from embarking on strike. I would say here now, and James would continue to say, I mean, when you look at the leadership of NLC, TUC, you look at the trade unions, laws and laws guarding trade activities, the unionism in Nigeria and indeed the whole world, it is clear that when workers are mistreated, they have to ask for their rights. And these rights have to be asked within the confines of what is provided for within the Constitution. And one of such is the last resort, which, of course, Labour has always maintained that before they get to take the decision to go on strike, they must have negotiated, and the federal government or the relevant government agencies responsible for what they're asking for have failed to show up, have failed to show commitment to resolving those. Now, we cannot in this country continue to use the instrument of the law, abuse the law court, abuse the judiciary process, abuse, sanctions and injunctions from the law court just to deprive people of their hard-earned rights. I mean, how do you continue to gain the favors of the judiciary, get court orders out to prevent workers whom you're owing 20 months salaries 20 months salaries is is by no way small. That is having people to work for 20 months without being paid. How do you expect them to survive? How are they even surviving to go to the work? How are they surviving with their families? How are they taking care of their health? And yet you are going to a court, and then somebody sitting within the confines of the court and issuing a directive barring people from asking for their rights or demanding for their rights from the leadership of the state or the country, as the case may be. So it's about time for leaders of this country at the respective level, from the state governors to the federal government, to understand that you cannot always have your way by manipulating the instrument of the state. As far as the court is concerned, it is high time for the courts and the leaders of the judiciary to also understand that before you look into giving injunction, question the validity, the reason behind why people want to protest.
Absolutely.
If you're sitting as the chief judge or you're sitting as a judge and you're not being paid your salary for 20 months, will you sit tight and not ask question or demand for that to be paid? But you sit there and then issue a verdict for other people who have not been paid for 20 months to not demand for their right. I mean, this is injustice taking too far.
It's a major concern, and I think this issue that you have raised is very pertinent, because we seem to sometimes have a judiciary that is sitting apart from what exactly is going on in the country. Now, we don't know how much investigation into cases or asking right questions is getting away from the justice system in our country, because it's not just because the federal government said so, it gets the verdict. And I think another big question Nigerians are asking: can we count the number of court orders that the federal government have been given in the last 1-2 years that they haven't obeyed? There are things, a lineup, a myriad of things that the courts in Nigeria have given the federal government standing orders on, but they are they've not obeyed those court orders. But when it comes to the federal government trying to use that same instrumentality of the judiciary against an organization, you seem to see the energy. It also suggests to a very large extent that the judiciary is not independent. It's not standing on its own to be able to give verdicts and judgments on issues. Why is the influence of the federal government that strong? It should get everything in the eyes of the law, should get fair hearing, including the welfare and the desires and the clamorings of labor unions. When first of all, we must establish that protest within the Nigerian constitution is actually legal, so it's not like an illegal action. Now every now and then it's like it's a new twist in the country, Francis, where a constitution is now interpreted to suit a particular case whenever they so please. So we are no longer seeing the fact that, oh, if the constitution says exactly this about an issue, that is what it is. Sometimes somebody will bring a subsection that counters it, or just makes you confused with some legal grammar, and then that's it. But that's a major problem that needs to be fixed, so that the country can run its course.
Well, it needs to be fixed, and for the first time, we shouldn't forget that Hope Uzodinma, the governor of Imo State, before now had not issued any statement, even issuing an apology. For the first time, he's admitted that he condemns what happened in Imo State, but he's still giving credence to what has been coming out from the leadership of this country, the federal government, that George Jero was in Imo State for political purposes, which, as at this moment, that can only be said as an unsubstantiated comment coming from the leadership of Imo State. Now, why did Uzodinma have to wait that long to respond or to react to the incident that happened is another question. Because if you had evidence as the governor, you simply should have shown Nigerians, this is what happened. I did not order, or this happened as a result of George Jero's involvement in politics, when he should be fighting for the rights of Nigerian workers. And then Nigerians would understand. But I do hope that in the midst of all of this, we get to see a different standpoint. We get to see a move from attempting to use the instrument of the court to stall the rights of Nigerians. You cannot, even the Bible, some arguments were being said yesterday why and how Uzodinma continues to wear white, which is attached to the heavenly bodies. And then he is not, is not sensitive to the fact that even the Bible, curses out on somebody who owes people salaries, who owes people, wages. That a person who holds an
I think the way it is even put is that a laborer,
exactly.
a laborer is worthy of their wage, you know. Yeah.
So you're holding somebody's wages, not just one, thousands of people for 20 whole months, not one, not two, not three, 20.
That's 2 years.
2 years plus.
2 years.
And then you are comfortable wearing white, going on events, going on Thanksgiving. Even the Thanksgiving you go to church to give.
I think my amazement is the fact that man won the elections. I think that's the part that I really can't wrap my mind. How do you owe salaries for 2 years? In 2 years out of the 4 years that you have been governor, and then all 27 local government areas in the same state that have families that have not been able to feed from the services that they render to the state government re-elect you? Someone has to be playing the fast one on us in what elections are in Nigeria. INEC needs, I'm telling you, the INEC has to be playing a really fast one on Nigerians. But I mean, well, Uzodimma as of now has regretted his assault, or let's say the state government's assault on Ajero. But he still stands on the fact that the NLC strike was politically motivated. No, it was hunger. It was hunger motivated. It was lack. It was poverty motivated. It was people trying to, call for their rights motivated. It's not the political motivation is not the first thing that must be looked at here. In the midst of all of this, Francis, have you heard any conversation as to what Hope Uzodimma plans to do for the people of Imo State with regards to those issues that even made them want to come out on the street in the first place? We haven't even heard of that. But of course, it's been barely 2 weeks after the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Joe Ajero, was allegedly assaulted by security operatives in Imo State. Governor Hope Uzodimma says he regrets the attack on the Labour leader. Of course, he said, just a background to that, Ajero was picked up from the NLC State Council Secretariat by heavily armed policemen in Owerri on Wednesday, November 1st, and taken to an unknown destination. And people really believe that, Nigerians should not be angry. Well, Uzodimma said that the Imo State government regrets the situation the Labour leader experienced in the state. He spoke on, of course, yesterday being Tuesday, at a meeting with the Imo State Council of Elders at the Government House. Let's see. Now, trying to represent the fact that the state is not one to be known for cowed or intimidation. They will not be intimidated by anyone, and they are not intimidators themselves. Let's see how that goes.
Well, it's a political rhetoric. I mean, every politician will always try to find a way to save himself or his government, or distance himself and his government from whatever incident that has happened that is not in the interest of the people. But either ways, Nigerians have eyes, the international community have eyes. I mean, if that incident was by any way the fault of Joe Ajero, there is no way the International Labour Organization would have slammed the federal government with a sanction. So it goes to show a lot is happening. But of course, it also goes to show the standpoint of the federal government, of the President Ahmed Bola Tinubu at this point in time. Of course, we do hope as we progress that we'll be able to see a different reaction coming from the presidents, because all eyes right now are on President Ahmed Bola Tinubu and to see what he's going to do in the midst of all of this. And like you rightly stated, the aftermath effect of this is going to be felt across board. Remember, before now, different unions are mobilized. So when it gets to the point where you have full shutdown of the aviation sector, shutdown of port authorities, shutdown of, Pengasan and other oil sector workers who have joined in the strike, it is going to be complete lockdown. And when we do get to that point, which of course will be happening with the mobilization and the move made by NLC TUC and declaration of support happening across borders, we will definitely have a serious problem on our hands. And if President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is serious about getting Nigeria back on track, then he had best, in the interest of Nigerians, mediate into this matter. And sadly, unfortunately, we still have to call on the leadership of the National Assembly. So, Senate President Godswill Akpabio, the House of Reps Speaker Tajuddin Abbas, there is literally nothing Nigerians can do other than reach out to you, because you are the elected representatives of Nigerians across board. So you represent the voice of over 200 million plus Nigerians, and it is your responsibility to ensure that Nigerians are not suffering. So the issue that is happening in Nigeria needs your mediation, and it needs you to address it in a way that all of the Nigerians' interests will be catered for. And then, of course, we can get back to business and having a better society. But right now, Nigerians are calling on NLC to sustain the strike action until there is a change in the narrative of things in this country. But this is where we place a pause on a flash news. We head out to our major news stories.
Rise and shine. Rise and shine.
Of course, we're still talking Nigeria, and this is Rise and Shine, and serious issues happening around the country. One of the biggest ones that we saw yesterday, I think I was somewhere, and then when we heard the news of the NCS, reporting that the Tinubu administration is saying that they were welcomed to Nigeria with an empty treasury. I think the person that was beside me just started laughing, because we are wondering which country exactly is this. It has taken almost this is more than 6 months since the Tinubu-led administration came into power, and now they're declaring that they came, into governance to see an empty treasury.
7 months after.
7 months.
So
after.
it took the leadership of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu
7 months to realize that the treasury was empty. And not just that it took 7 months. I think at this space, by the time Nigerians and certain people have called, certain quarters at the presidency to ask, like, really, after 7 months, that's how long it took you to see that the treasury was empty. And now they added a new twist that not only did they see an empty treasury, they also met some assets in the country.
Well, it's a welcome development for most Nigerians. I mean, each day Nigerians will tell you you have not seen the least or the worst, or the latest, the breaking story when it comes to President Ahmed Bola Tinubu's administration. But when you look at the situation playing out, in the present administration, in just 7 months, we borrowed more than 30 billion US dollars to, do a couple of things, to fund projects, to do one thing or the other. And within that space, we didn't hear any reason. We didn't get any reason. We were not told as Nigerians that there was no money in their purse. And then you ask the question, what has been happening to our foreign reserve? What has been happening to the money that comes as a result of the activities in the crude, the crude oil market as a result of the oil sector? How much does Nigeria even have as a reserve at this moment? How much are we, keeping aside as a country? When you look at the loots that has been returned and the planned 150 million US dollars is also en route to be returned to Nigeria, you ask a whole lot of questions. How is it that we do not have money as a country with all of the activities that is happening? And then, if for a fact the president, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, is telling Nigerians, we do not have money, but we had the nerves as a country to borrow money to buy SUVs. What millions? Those millions that could change the narrative in the health sector.
That can be millions. When each person is taking 160 million SUV, multiply it by the number of people.
No, I'm using individually. Now, if they were to take that money to their respective constituencies, what would that money have done in the different sectors that are begging for attention? We do not have money in the treasury, but we can borrow more money to fund leisure for a few persons at the detriment of Nigerians. So, where is renewed hope? Is there renewed hope to further impoverish Nigerians? So when President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is saying poverty is not an excuse, poverty cannot be tolerated in my administration, and yet that is your comment to Nigerians, but your body language, your actions is showing complete opposite. How can Nigerians trust you? It's a serious concern. It's a serious conversation. And I would say this again, as far as Nigerians are concerned, this present administration has not done anything so far. From all of the incidences that has happened, the post-subsidy era, the removal of fuel subsidy, the palliative. I mean, the story of the palliative is a sorry explanation of how ineffective the move by the federal government has been. How many Nigerians have had access to those palliative? How many people within the government coffers who have manipulated and carted away those palliative have been arrested or prosecuted? So it's a whole lot of things. If we have to change Nigeria, if indeed there should be hope for Nigeria, then there needs to be that strong, firm will demonstration on the part of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu and his cabinet members to change the narrative. And that must start with an action from them. You cannot constantly ask Nigerians to sacrifice when you yourself have failed to sacrifice.
Well, it's a sorry situation. We have seen that this is where we are currently. It looks like the federal government has run to a financial crossroad, and one of the easiest explanation for them to give to Nigerians is the fact that the treasury wasn't full when they got there, and that they inherited a lot of liabilities. But just as an attempt to balance it out, that there were pockets of assets here and there by the former administration and his predecessors. But there are several reasons why these repleting effects are seen in investment opportunities, in the economy, in security, and all of that. But first of all, one of the statements that the president has made with regards to this particular statement that was released is about that he's not trying to make any excuses. Yes, we inherited liabilities. Yes, we inherited some assets, but he's not trying to make excuses, for what the federal government is doing and how they intend to go about raising more resources to, help Nigerians out of the quagmire that we are. But it's a funny situation and a funny statement for us to hear at this time. That is why, Francis, we always have the conversation. When you have handover notes done by a previous administration, what are the things contained in the handover note? Don't forget that the Buhari-led administration had, I think it was a year-long committee that that were putting stories together, putting his works together, rounding up notes. In those final notes that were handed over to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the treasury of the state, the liabilities of the state, how much the state was currently worth in reserves and all of that, was it not part of the handover notes that were given to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? And why is the conversation just coming up now about liabilities? We know that there is no government that doesn't leave a liability, but when you're saying that the treasury and all of that was not healthy, you didn't come to a big one. It's all that we are doing together. Just on the hill before former President Muhammadu Buhari left, he was about to borrow $800 million, and that $500 million borrowing for palliative. One of the strongest conversations that I remember that we had was, now that Bola Ahmed Tinubu is coming in, will he still think that borrowing this money is of a necessity, for the country? But we've seen far worse borrowing after that. Is that not also a liability that you're going to leave for who comes after you? It's not. I think also we need to stop the politics of pointing fingers. We've not seen where it has taken us to a nation so far.
Well, the politics of pointing fingers, I think it was just yesterday I read an analysis that it's going to take Nigeria about 120 years to be able to pay back the huge amount of debt that the federal government has gotten.
No, but we are being fanned that we are still within our window of borrowing, so we can still keep borrowing until we hit the roof.
Let's keep borrowing more, and then let's keep borrowing more to spend on frivolous things.
Instead of concentrating on ways that every nation of the world borrows. That is one thing we must put out there. Every nation of the world borrows.
Agreed.
No economy is thriving on its own. No economy is working on its own wheels. They borrow. But when you borrow these monies, where do you put it? Imagine the impetus to borrow money and come and drive cars and borrow money and do all kinds of things. Out of the palliative, how much was given to the judiciary? How much was given to the legislators? And then you borrow these monies, but you do not put it in sectors that can generate...
You forgot to ask, how much was given to the private sector, who generates a whole lot of income for this country as well?
These are conversations that touch the hearts, So, but we are not making investments where these monies can, generate return on investment. We are just putting them in conduit pipes for siphoning, conduit pipe for people to get this money. Then you now hear that the EFCC is chasing one person, the ICPC is on one person's tail. Oh, you've been asked to return 100 billion naira, but we never hear anything after that. Nigeria just needs to fix its systems. It's a systemic cancer that we are fighting with, Francis.
Well, is indeed a serious problem, and every person who is a Nigerian will always say we cannot give up hope as long as we keep living. But it's about time for us to stop saying we cannot give up hope and start doing the actions. And it all starts with each and every one of us. And the biggest conversation that has ever come out, the biggest comment that has come out from, for me, from the human rights activist lawyer Femi Falana, has been the fact that we as Nigerians, we are the reason why politicians are taking office granted.
Exactly.
Because in saner climes, this wouldn't happen. In saner climes, the people will not sit back and watch things happening and then everybody folds their hands and then it's business as usual with a less of fair attitude. And the politicians keep believing that they are the most powerful, whereas the greatest power belongs to the people. But until we begin to ask the right question and begin to hold politicians from our constituents accountable, from the very least as a common, or what would you call it, even if you don't use that word, from the least leader, as a council councillor, to the chairman, to the House of Assembly members, to the Federal House members, to the senators, down to the president. We need to consistently, and we need to unite as a people. And that's one of the conversations that we need to also have. It seems Nigeria will always be divided across party lines and across interests. It's about time for us to put these party sentiments and personal interests aside. Because if we continue to engage and support our party faithfuls or our party leaders just because it is our party, just because they belong to our party and it is a party that is in power, without looking at what these individuals are doing and how it is affecting the generality of Nigerians, we are all going to suffer. The last off-season election that we just had, if you go on the street, the argument people are asking, you who voted for XYZ, how are you feeling? Is it any different for you? Are you buying fuel in a different filling station at a different price, different from Nigerians or of the other political parties? Of course, you're also buying the same price. So if you're not within the corridors of power and fuel is not given to you free of charge at the expense of Nigerians, it means you're also suffering what Nigerians are facing. So if you feel because of party interest, you would continue to defend injustice, you continue to defend, maltreatment, marginalization, misappropriation, then you are one of the biggest problems we have in this country. So until Nigerians also decide on their own to unite as a people and understand that when politics is over and done with and governance takes center stage, we need to break away from the party line sentiment and look at the common good. And that common good would be the leaders who are in charge, irrespective of what political power they came under or what political power they used to ride into power. Are they doing things that will benefit the generality of Nigerians, irrespective of party? Now, let's get one thing straight. If the economy of this country works, whether you're a PDP, APC, Labour Party, NNPP, APM, whatever party you belong to, as long as you are not lazy, you're going to be able to fend for yourself and your family. When there is security in this country, it is going to spiral out to everybody. I'm yet to see a terrorist or a Boko Haram member or kidnappers asking questions, are you of APC or PDP or YPP before kidnapping somebody? It happens across. So when we solve those issues, it cuts across each and every one of us. And when we decide to use party sentiments to support and acknowledge the ineptitude on the part of our leaders, then one way or the other, as the proverbial saying, if you throw stone into the marketplace, it will hit somebody. And if it doesn't hit you back, it will hit somebody you know. And it's just a little bit that is left on the part of Nigerians. And I don't know how long we're going to wait and how long Nigerians are going to have to cope. But we definitely need to get past it, because if you walk through the streets today, Nigerians are becoming more angry. The inhumanity in the country is growing alarming. And the more inhuman Nigerians become, the more dangerous, the more deadly it is for the government of this country.
Well, it's a serious issue, but let us also look at how other stakeholders in the politics and democracy of Nigeria can play a role in making sure that Nigeria moves from where she is currently as a nation to a place of destination. We see that the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, just yesterday called for a coalition of some sort from other opposition political parties in the country. Now, of course, we saw him calling for a formidable united opposition front. He said the project of protecting democracy in our country is not about just one man. He said we have to, come together to cooperate in order to promote democracy in Nigeria. Now, Atiku Abubakar is urging the People's Democratic Party, the Labour Party, and others to unite against the APC. He described what he decried, I beg your pardon, what he described as a gradual slide of Nigeria into a one-party state. Of course, he said the opposition parties needed to come together to challenge the ruling APC to save Nigeria's democracy. Of course, we see the fact that him himself, having been a former vice president and tried so many times to become president of this country, I think it will be a good, sound and a good voice to call for a coalition. But is it having a political merger now amongst these opposition parties? Francis, what are what would we say are the kinds of benefits that we are going to derive from out of this? And eventually, will it not still descend into the kind of political crisis that we always see? I mean, all kinds of intra-party wranglings. When you now have a coalition of different parties with different ideologies and visions, hoping that they're the ones that will win the next election, is that not going to be a major problem on our hands? Is a coalition even possible amongst our opposition parties in this country?
Well, one of our guys, Victor Nama, will always say there are no clear-cut ideologies for politicians in Nigeria or political parties. There are no clear-cut, stipulated mindset. Like you see in Senate claims, you have the Democrats and the Republican. You come down to Nigeria, every political party, all politicians are cut from the same piece. There is no clear-cut ideals for the respective parties. These ones, there is no clear identification by their focus and deliberate commitment to things. So you cannot say party A is an industrialist or they believe in industrialization, or party B believe in economic viability or whatever. There are no clear-cut ideals across the party line. So it is more or less a matter of interest for the individual politicians now gathering, and it's all about power. And it's all about taking charge. It's all about being in control of, the nation's resources and being the ones who bring out the policies that affect the generality of Nigerians. So is there a possibility of a merger? Well, there is. If the respective stakeholders across the political parties can come. I mean, APC came as a result of a merger, and look where they are today. And we can't forget in a hurry that, in as much as most Nigerians have said Atiku Abubakar's call is coming rather too late, and that if he hadn't been selfish, he would have considered that major when the Labour Party presidential candidate broke out from the PDP. And then, of course, Rabiu Kwankwa saw if they had all converged together before the election, as that then when Nigerians were clamoring, and those, rumors filtered into the media space, they probably would have stood a better chance. I mean, consider adding the votes garnered by Rabiu Kwankwaso, that of Atiku Abubakar, and that of Labour Party into one of them. There's literally no reason why one of them would have emerged as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But that is something that has happened and is over and done with. Can they come together and agree on common terms and common grounds? Will that agreement be in the interest of Nigerians? Those are questions we cannot answer until it actually happens, because only the stakeholders of these respective political parties can tell us what would transpire. And it's one thing for Atiku Abubakar to be seen to call. What are his decisions and what are his standpoint? What will he be doing? And will he, when this merger comes, there's also going to be a conversation of who is going to be the principal candidate.
Exactly.
So, will Atiku Abubakar decide and agree to not be the principal candidate?
Which that may not be unanimously agreed upon. There's a lot. When we've seen the political architecture and texture of democracy in Nigeria, of politics in Nigeria, we know what will work and we know what will not work. The political ambition of the men and women in our democratic system is so wild. It's not the kind that can be termed. I mean, we are looking at the fact that people would go to any extent, literally, Francis, to be elected into a particular office. Now, when you call for a coalition, how will we take out those demons, that walk around the circles to be able to drive a common good? But another angle we can look at with regards to this coalition is let the opposition come together and have a common voice, as opposition to the APC. Let them come together and speak unanimously, and looking into activities of the Tinubu-led administration. There is a word I'd like to use and describe what I hope they could do. Not instigated by, oh, we wish it were us, on that seat and all of this, but a very informed style of opposition. It would be good if they started out from there. Let them try it out for a year or two and see how they serve together as an opposition to the APC government. Now, before we talk of coalition that can birth new leadership out of the country. But that's where we'll let that particular story to rest right now. Mary Joseph is on standby to bring us tidbits of global news on the News Brief desk. When we return, there's a lot of conversations we'll be having this morning, so do stay with us.
Rise and shine.